Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Jeff Sass. I'm the CMO of .art Registry, and on behalf of Obi and the entire .art team, it's my pleasure to welcome you here today. Want to welcome our Hug community and our .art community and everyone else to this webinar, which is a really important topic, grants. This is something that's going to be of value to artists everywhere in terms of looking at new ways to get more money for your projects and support for your career as an artist. Before we begin, I just want to remind everyone that at .art, our underlying mission is to support the healing powers of art. So everything we do, a portion of our revenue goes to promote awareness and access to the healing powers of art. Very important to us. So by joining us today, by supporting .art, you're also helping us spread the word of the therapeutic benefits of art, both for artists and creatives, as well as for the community who gets to enjoy and consume that art. So it's a very important topic to us. So without further ado, let us dive in. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator and host for today. She is the head of strategic art partnerships for .art Registry, Daria Kravchuk. Daria, I'd like to hand it over to you. Thank you for today's webinar.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Welcome, everyone. I'm thrilled to host today's webinar as it really opens up a crucial conversation on researching and applying for grants, a topic which is complex and also not easily accessible. Our goal is to shed light on this process, offering insights and also some practical guidance to help artists and art professionals to navigate this world of opportunities, but also challenges. And it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Arthur Steiner, who will provide an overview of this essential subject. Arthur is an art historian and digital strategist and cultural entrepreneur. He's also the co-founder of New Silk Roads, which is a consultancy agency operating from Cairo, Tunis, and Amsterdam. And he previously led the global grant-making program on contemporary art and culture at HIVOS. He also founded Digital Earth a few years ago, which was a research fellowship that supported artists and designers worldwide. So Arthur, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone, and thanks a lot, Daria, for and .art for the invitation and for this nice introduction. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I have kind of background which combines being a grant seeker and being a funder as well. So I've seen kind of both realities, like on the one hand, like all these endless proposal writing processes, and on the other hand, like being a funder and setting up open calls, like assessing proposals. And I've seen a kind of the good side and the bad side of this world of grant making, of subsidies and philanthropy and so on, the shifting strategies, like the constant donor agendas, sometimes the freezes in funding and so on. So I've seen those kind of more bad side, but also the upside, how it can really help cultural communities and artists in different countries. Anyway, today I will give a very short presentation about fundraising, and specifically about grant writing, and we'll do three things. We'll focus in on looking for opportunities, then we'll zooming in on how to decide to apply, and the third thing is I will share some tips and tricks. So where to look for opportunities, as Daria already said, it can be a kind of mystical world, grant making foundations, so it can be a kind of labyrinth where to look. Here you see four places where you can find a lot of information about grants. The first obviously is websites of donors, and specifically newsletters and mailing lists. Secondly, social media, and I would say specifically LinkedIn. I know many artists are on Insta or on X if you're in digital arts, but actually LinkedIn is probably the better social media platform where you can find grant opportunities. I would specifically recommend you to start following program officers of foundations that provide grants, because those people share a lot on LinkedIn. They share a lot of opportunities, so it's a very good place to look around. Of course, like events, exhibition openings, but also network events of funders. Funders tend to also go to different events than artists, is my experience. So look up where these people go, also through social media. And finally, like look into free and paid fundraising services. And I have put here some places where you can actually look for opportunities. For example, on the left side, you see like the website On the Move, which I think is a very good website, which gives like guides, funding guides for almost all countries in Europe, where you can see like all the foundations that are active, that are funding artists. There's also the website artenda.net, which provides like a lot of art opportunities. It's a paid service. There's of course Call for Curators, which provide like more job opportunities. And then there is also, here you can see like the kind of cultural funding guide from the EU. So that's a very good guide if you're specifically interested to explore the world of the EU, which can be also quite complex. So this website actually helps, helps you to guide through that labyrinth of funding opportunities. And then there are also all kinds of other places, obvious eFlux, and so on. Then deciding to apply, it sounds maybe obvious, but I've seen many people actually struggling in this part of the process, because many organizations, cultural organizations, but also artists, they kind of ad hoc, apply ad hoc. They don't always read all the requirements, take time, take the proper time to see if everything fits to them. So actually, one of my main advice is like take sufficient time for the decision-making process. If you want to apply for something, that could, for example, take you can, for example, like make a go no-go form, take proper time to go through this decision-making process. I will show you a go no-go form that you can use for each grant opportunity. In my experience, it's really helpful to slowly go through each step before you actually apply, to make a rational decision if a grant is actually worth trying. The first thing to look into, of course, is the deadline. Do you have sufficient time to develop a good application? The second is the topic. Does it really fit? Read carefully, and don't look through like the kind of pink lens, so to say, to the application, to the open call, and really look carefully if it really fits. One tip is to look into previous awarded projects. Many people tend to look at the open call text of a foundation, but those ones are usually quite abstract and like, usually you think like, oh, that would fit to me, to my practice. But it's actually more helpful to look into past projects that they funded and see like if there are cultural practices that are similar to yours. Look at the track record, your own capacity also. Be honest about the amount and the reporting requirements, for example, that are needed, especially for the EU. Like there's a lot of reporting requirements needed, but also look like to the amount. Is this an amount that you can handle? And like the geography, the registration. And so really carefully check these eligibility criteria. The objectives and the priorities, of course. Check the donor agenda. Sometimes people ask me, are there funders that don't have an agenda? Then my answer is no. Almost all funders, or all funders, have an agenda. So don't be naive in that. We can maybe discuss that later on in the Q&A. And then also in this go no go form, check a bit like what's the competition, how many people will apply for this, what are the amount of grants that are available, and so on. So this helps with making the decision to apply. A good question, and maybe for the discussion, is: did you ever refuse a grant? There are, of course, also risks in taking grants, reputational risks, but also a risk relating to the background of the funders, like are they involved, for example, in fossil fuels or like human rights violations? Do you want to accept the money of this particular funder? Many funders, they have a specific background in corporates, sometimes private, and so on. So do some research on that. Can you receive funds from a foreign government? I think that's specifically important. If you're in specific countries in the world that have funding restrictions, maybe we can also discuss that later on. Is it allowed, for example? What are the legal risks and so on? So these are also important questions to ask yourself before you start applying. Then it's important to realize that there are many different types of funders. Like, it's not like that there is one type of funder and that grant writing works always the same for all funders. No, it's very important to realize that there are different types of funders. Here I give a small overview. First and foremost, there are multilateral donors, like, of course, like the EU, like UNESCO, like EIT, which is a new funding body, like set up, or the EIT Cultural and Creativity is officially called. It's by the European Institute for Technology, providing lots of grants. Then there is like Arts Move Europe, which is a great funding facility for if you want to get your travel costs reimbursed, or if you want to do a residency in another country, if you want to do a collaboration. Then there are the bilateral funders, like the British Council, like these cultural institutes, the Goethe Institut Français. They also have a specific kind of agenda, usually, has to involve those countries. So if you want to do something with the UK, then British Council is a good one, and so on. Then there are private foundations. They work kind of differently from the two other groups, in the sense that they're usually more easy in terms of application format, but the downside is that they sometimes don't work with open calls and only through unsolicited processes. So you have to know someone there. Then there are thematic funds, like, for example, those that focus on film, or those ones that focus on video art. Then there are INGOs, like international non-profit organizations, that are not necessarily focused only on the arts, but focused on environment, focused on like other thematic areas, which actually work a lot with artists, and very often also have open calls for cultural organizations or for artists. It's usually less competitive than the other categories, so actually worth it to look into. There are regional funds that focus, for example, on like the Middle East and North Africa, like the Arab Funds for Arts and Culture, or on Africa, and so on. There are awards and prizes, and then there are fellowships and residencies. And I would say like each of these categories like have their specific requirements, their specific way of working. For a residency or a fellowship grant, it's usually really a different process than for, like, let's say, the EU. Then my final tips and tricks for you today. The first one is actually to stay true to yourself. Don't start chasing funder trends. I've seen that a lot, and usually it doesn't pay off, like, to just jump on everything, like try to speak the latest buzzwords and so on, but actually like stay true to your own practice, and be critical, maybe through such a go, no go form, to make really a rational decision if it really fits. When I've been in the shoes of the funder, let's say, and I've read a lot of applications and I've done a lot of funder conversations, one of the biggest issues is always the lack of clarity. Usually applications are quite unclear, either because there is not enough information or there's kind of an overload of information. And it's sometimes very hard then to pick out the key points as someone that reads these applications. And you have to imagine, like, the people that are reading these applications, they're reading like a lot on one day. So they're sometimes also quite tired reading artist CVs, and like especially those applications that use a lot of terminology, a lot of buzzwords, lots of theory, they, in my experience, they get rejected. So that would be a tip also, like to be very careful and be very strategic in the way you write. My tip would be to think really about the purpose of your project. How does it serve the community? Maybe something else about the writing process or the grant writing process is that a lot of people, they kind of mirror their thinking into an application. So you can really see their kind of thinking process. But actually that doesn't work out very often because it's like you read the kind of process of someone achieving to the step of writing this application. But it usually misses like very simple things like who, what, where, when is the project, etc. So be very specific and very concrete in your application. Get feedback from someone else. Outside perspective is very good. I would also say be careful with ChatGPT these days. I've been recently in a jury of grants for cultural organizations and artists, and I encountered so many ChatGPT proposals, and it becomes like very general. So you have to be careful with it. You have to use it in the right way, and not use it like to just write all your text. Be careful with buzzwords. I already mentioned that. Explain the context where you're coming from. I think that's another tip I would give to you. Put down put down a lot of information about its context where you're working, and avoid theory. Another thing, of course, is never put down other individuals or organizations to make yourself look good. I've seen that also strangely enough, a lot. That's people in their applications, they start saying like, I'm better than this person, or like I'm different, or I'm the first one to do something. That's also something very dangerous to say, because usually funders, they have quite a good overview of what's happening. So be careful with making claims, big claims. Sense and include like a portfolio of recent work, not old work, show your kind of social capital or your cultural capital, or the validation that you have in the sector. I think most grant proposals are assessed by people that work in the sector, that know other people. So peer validation is very important. Do good research on the funder. It happened a lot to me when I was a funder, that I had conversations with people, and I found out along the way that they actually had no idea about the background of the organization I was working for at the time. So do your homework, read what this organization is doing in the background, and then finally stick to the promises and the reporting deadlines. And of course, keep the funders always involved and informed about your work also after you get the grant. So these are my tips and tricks for today. And thanks a lot.
Thank you, Arthur. Such an insightful presentation, and I think it really gives a great overview. And dear audience, also please don't forget that you can leave comments and questions in the comment section, because we will be having a sort of like panel discussion a little bit later. I also wanted to share some of my experiences with grants. As a curator, I've learned that while the process of applying for grants can be challenging, it also gives an opportunity to refine curatorial concepts and articulate the impact of an exhibition, also connect with organizations that support artistic and cultural initiatives. So first and foremost, I think research is essential, also as Arthur was mentioning it. So I begin by identifying grants that align with the theme, scope, and goals of the project which I'm curating. I visit the websites of the foundation. I follow art organizations on their social media in order to always stay informed about available opportunities. Also, like signing up for newsletters and funding alerts also helps to keep the track of deadlines. Because you always need to make sure that you have enough time for developing a well-structured application. Once I identified a suitable grant, I carefully review eligibility criteria, because some grants, they are specific for regions or artistic disciplines or, career stages of the artist I'm working with. Some are more focused on socially engaged projects, some supporting collaborative projects, etc. So you really have to pay close attention to that. And I think that understanding these requirements really allow you to tailor your application to meet the funder's expectations. And then, of course, like working on a very compelling proposal, clearly identifying the exhibition's curatorial concept, the outline of intended impact. I think impact of the project is incredibly important to keep in mind, and also like to specify how the grant will help to realize the project. So also like ensure that proposal aligns with the mission and values of the funding organization. The exhibition always should try like to contribute to the cultural landscape and also to engage with diverse contemporary, like, let's say, issues. I also do my best to avoid vague descriptions and trying to go for more clear and engaging ones, and also persuasive language. So another important part is well-prepared, well-structured budget, which is super like crucial to any grant application. You have to provide a very transparent breakdown of how the funds will be allocated. They can cover expenses such as artist fees or production costs, like venue rental, transportation, installation, promotion. But like here, accuracy and transparency are really essential, because it's not only about the grant, getting the grant, it's also about how you're going to demonstrate all the receipts afterwards. So you have to keep track of all these expenditures, etc. So yeah, and then of course, like before submitting the application, always like try to seek some feedback from colleagues, from mentors, and I think like their insights are crucial for improvement and also help to refine proposals. So yeah, this constructive criticism is always welcome. Also, what I think is very important to mention, and this is what we have seen from Arthur's presentation, that there are so many different types of grants, but also I think that the most successful projects maybe are those which are being supported by diverse network of collaborators. So it can be both academic institutions and universities on one hand, then it can be foundations, then it can be also cultural departments of diverse embassies, and then it can be also technical sponsors. And here we're talking about those companies who provide the tools and expertise in order to like provide equipment or production or logistical support, or maybe even web-based solutions, because like these partnerships, they are crucial for ensuring the technical quality of exhibitions. And also maybe sometimes they're even, possible to, they make it possible to extend the projects to the metaverse, or also provide online presence, like actually Art does. So thank you for listening to my experience within this topic. And now I'm delighted also to introduce Juliet Klottrup. She is an award-winning visual artist who's based in UK. Hi, Juliet.
Hello.
So yeah, I would like to talk about your practice today and about your experience with different grants. And I think in order maybe to dive into it, let's go briefly through the project, which got, I believe, even several grants, which is called Skate Like a Loss.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you can tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so Skate Like a Lass is a social documentary project. So it's a photographic project and also a film. And for over 2 years, I've been photographing grassroots, inclusive skateboarding communities in the northwest of England. And so the project on the whole, it was a real cross-sector working project. I was an honorary teaching fellow at the University of Cumbria. So whilst I was beginning the research project, I was sharing it with students on live socially engaged briefs that the students were doing themselves, as I had written this project and was doing my own socially engaged work. So the scope of the project was not only me photographing the skating community in the northwest of England. A key aspect of the project that I wrote was to ensure that it was co-curated by skaters themselves. So I had cameras available and accessible. So it was, a co-authored project, both film and photographic, to create personal storytelling and to really document the region. There were voices and communities that are massively underrepresented in the northwest of the UK, and particularly skateboarding. The historical documentation doesn't always include women, marginalised and LGBTQ+ individuals. So an enormous project that's taken over 2 years. So these are some stills from the film, a 3-minute film, which captures these voices through recorded interviews. Cameras were passed around. This 3-minute film, and then also there will be on the next slide. These are the portraits, the more formal portraits that I took of skaters. So the outputs were a film, a photographic series, and a zine. This week I'm exhibiting locally within the region. So it's going to be in Preston, a place called Shop, which is a community space. So really accessible for the people who've been photographed. And then it will go to Blackpool, in the same region that I've been photographing in. So an enormous undertaking and a real blueprint for how I will be making work moving forward, but really advocating for arts in community spaces. And that's a lot.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And it's so nice also that the project will be happening there and indeed like so accessible for everyone, for the community. And just in order to focus a little bit also on the grants which were supporting this project, could you tell us a little bit about the experience, how you were applying for these grants, and just which advice you can also give to artists?
Yeah, I mean, everything that's already been said today is hugely helpful. I was just nodding along as it was going on. I applied for Arts Council Develop Your Creative Practice and National Lottery Project Grant. I'm a neurodivergent artist with dyslexia, so I was able to get access support with Lara Monroe, who was incredibly helpful throughout the whole process. There's for me, definitely barriers in applying for project grants. It can be quite consuming. I'm sure you all can find it tricky. There's a lot of forms to fill out, and I think I've always had really clear intentions about my projects, and it's really interesting what was said before about not trying to fit your project into the mold of a brief. Fortunately, all my projects are about social and cultural communities, and shining a voice, shining a light on voices that are regional. So one of the things I found really difficult was just getting that down onto paper, right? Literally having somebody to support me to articulate the questions when my vision was there, but actually the process of it I found quite tricky.
Yeah, indeed, it can be very challenging. And I think that, through dialogue, it just becomes more sort of doable and visible. Yeah. But I'm just curious, like when you're applying for the grants, how do you articulate the impact of your work? Like meaning also like artistically and socially, because your projects are so much like socially focused.
Yeah, so it was really important for me to make sure that there was some kind of craft sharing. So there was actual social engagement. So not only am I photographing a community, I'm also workshopping and participating to some kind of creative sharing. that was really important, to have an exhibition that was visible and accessible for people who were involved in the project. The online presence of the work as well has been really important. The film at the moment now it's just been released, and some of the skaters involved in it have been sharing it on TikTok. There's an online presence, there's a physical presence, and also there was a zine that's been produced for the project. So that was kind of like a summary of not only my research, but also like the tangible outputs from myself and the participants in the work.
Mm-hmm. Yes, wonderful. So also another question, how important do you think it was for you to align your project with the mission of those funding organizations you were applying for? Because this is also what we were, like both me and Arthur, I think, mentioning earlier. And I just want to see how it really matches with the, real life situations.
Yeah, it was really aligned, actually, my project. And I think because I'm coming at this from, now I've done these project grants, I have a better understanding of how to apply for one. I think I've learned this in reverse. Like the project was written as in that's what I wanted to do. And it was fortunate that it aligned so perfectly with Arts Council and National Lottery, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that it was pretty smooth process for you, but maybe like, were there some challenges, or what were the key challenges which you faced?
Yeah, I think, had I not got the funding for this project, it would have taken me, I would have still done the work, but it would have taken me a very long time to do it. I think the grants have made me accountable for managing my time better, because I'm so guilty of just giving everything to the work. And I think artists can be really bad at not paying themselves properly and not looking after themselves, because you just want to do it. You want to give everything to the work. So I think in some ways it's kind of formalized the way I work, which has been so helpful for my longevity, I guess, because hopefully I can do this forever, and I can only make good work if there's some kind of control happening, like you can't give every single hour. Like I would like to, but you can't, because it's not sustainable. So I think the grant, is that a challenge? I think that's just a learning, and I guess the success of the projects have been that I am then able to move that approach forward for more work and for more projects.
Yeah, that's the word I had in mind, sustainability. But sustainability, towards yourself also, and towards your planning schedules throughout the day. Yeah, like, so you really feel that all this funding opportunities they gave you, just new opportunities which you couldn't have had otherwise, right? Because it really speeded up the process of creating the projects, and then also, I believe, also sort of like widened the range of possibilities, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think, as a freelance photographer, filmmaker, artist, to do the work without any funding would have just taken so long. And other projects that I'm working on, I will self-fund. Any commercial work I have, I then put into my creative practice. So the grants make it viable and possible for me to make work that I want to, that I find rewarding and is useful. And then, now that that's been funded, hopefully it does inform the other work that I make. That might be commercial as well. So it's been so supportive of the health of my practice in that way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to ask you, do you think were you in sort of like a dialogue with this organization you were applying to, or it was just more, let's say, like formal and professional, and you were just sending the official application or some kind of letter and that's it? Because that's also what we were mentioning before. Yeah.
The second, it was incredibly formal, and of course I had Lara Monroe, my who helped me with my applications. So it was, I didn't really speak to anybody face to face. It very much was, all online, very separate.
Do you follow any specific, resources or directories or platforms for grants? Do you look out for it?
Yeah, it's honestly, I've got 100 different Instagram tabs and different docs, and I try and be really good and set alarms on my on my calendar for how much time to give myself in advance. But because I'm kind of working across a huge, photography and film is a huge medium. So the grants that I'm looking at can be very niche, super small budgets to something enormous. And as was said before by Arthur, I was just having a look at all of those different institutions, being like, well, I haven't heard of that one. I'm going to add that to the list. Yeah,
it's a really handy one indeed. And are you currently working on some project which will also need the grant in order to be realized?
Well, so this project that I'm currently on, Skate Like a Lass, that's on the tail end. So the zine is coming today. It's being delivered today. The exhibition is this week. And then I'm writing a film project and looking for funding for a social documentary film project as well. So deadlines are coming up. So I'm going to get my head in that give myself plenty of time. Don't leave it to the last minute. I won't do that.
Good. Well, great idea. Thank you so much, Juliet. Thank you for your presentation. And now I'd like to invite Giorgi Rodionov. He's based between Tbilisi and Berlin. He's an artist and curator who works a lot with different social, political narratives. And Giorgi also, in 2019, he founded Untitled Tbilisi, which is an art space dedicated to uniting artists and activists from the larger South Caucasus region. Hi, Giorgi. How are you doing?
Hey, Daria. Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Thank you for
Thanks
joining.
so much thank you so much for inviting, and it's a pleasure to be here. And hello everyone also who's watching, and thank you, Art, also.
Yeah. It's wonderful to have you on board with us, also because there are certain challenges, I think, with projects from Georgia these days, and I think a lot of culture organizations there, they do depend also on, let's say, like EU based grants, right? And I believe you were working a lot with those ones. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about them, because you're also like in between Tbilisi and Berlin, and I think you bring a lot of Georgian art to Europe.
Yeah. As you mentioned, we're Untitled Tbilisi. We started since 2019, and since then, basically, we are just based on the fundings. Our work is mainly supported from European funding organizations or European Union itself. There has been like a lot of different projects, mainly like our projects were coming like project funds without this like organizational funding. So it was always like connected to specific idea or exhibition or festival, etc. But we also did a lot of art residencies for the artists who had to flee from their homes, like from the neighboring countries around Georgia, but not only. But yeah, it's the time is challenging for everyone right now. There were like really amazing organizations listed earlier in our call, but I think Arthur also mentioned that these organizations might be working in certain areas, like for example in Georgia, but then you should always take the new laws into consideration and new political agenda from your current government. For example, now since 2 years or like 1 year ago, Georgia government decided to cancel all, or not to cancel, but to mark all the organizations that are getting fundings from foreign forces, meaning like outside of Georgia, as foreign agents, which is it's very disturbing for all the organizations, not only art organizations. It's direct insult, and it stops a lot of opportunities for the organizations. So there are lots of challenges through that. For example, with Georgia now, first how to apply for these fundings that were always there. Basically, they're still there, but then you need to call yourself as a foreign agent, which we all know is coming or connected to Russian influence law or generally Russian politics, which is very disturbing for Georgian people and artists. So yeah, I don't know. There's so many things to talk about right now, connected also to global politics that we see, especially
Yes.
in the beginning of this year.
Absolutely. The situation is changing drastically, both in EU, but also US. I would say that today's conversation is slightly more, let's say, EU focused. I think we will also continue with US a little bit later. It just, you can't fit it all in 1 hour, right? Not doable. But yeah, just switching to more, let's say, like a little bit like practical things. Like, first of all, like, what are the factors which are the most critical for you when you select grants you're applying for?
Well, obviously, like political belonging of the organization, if that's what you mean, or and yeah, like the agenda that they have and we have, and they should definitely match. And for us, it's also very important to have the sense of urgency and general sense of understanding of each other, because we had quite a few collaborations with different funding organizations where they gave us the funding, but then they were not fully aware of the regional understanding of politics or social structure, basically. So these two factors are very important for us collaborating with funding organizations. Yeah, basically like mutual understanding and mutual respect.
Yeah. Of course. And I think that also because we talked a little bit about the topic of grants with you earlier, and you were mentioning a lot like this kind of like collaborative project. So because collaboration, I believe, is also central to your practice. So I think you're trying to establish these connections between artists, institutions, and activists, and also across borders. And I think usually it makes the grant applications like much more, successful and compelling for the funders. Yeah, if you can, dive into it.
In general, like our organization was funded with the main aim of to connect not only the artists in the region and outside of the region, but also the art initiatives or organizations. So we have been, like, since the beginning, we have been collaborating with a lot of organizations in like Azerbaijan, Armenia, and all of the conflict-divide spaces, like, for example, Abkhazia and some other non-recognized countries internationally. And yes, of course, it helps a lot to approach the funding organizations as well, because in our experience, because again, like, we are working a lot with the EU fundings, or like fundings that are coming from EU countries. And for them, mainly, it's very important to have not only one single artist doing something only for like one single project, but to collaborate with either different artists or different countries or organizations, basically. So this, and I mean, it's not good only for the funding, for like getting the funding, but to also convince them that you're not alone in this fight for freedom. And sometimes they're like, for example, Ria Keburia's residency that you're also familiar with, that can just like kindly give you the space if you're doing the residency, and then you need money for, I don't know, travel only in that case. So you save a lot of budgets. So instead of asking like a zillion euros, then you can just get like a small part of it because of your collaboration. So it's always important to keep in touch with your partners and not to stop collaborating, or not to collaborate only when the money is around, but to always keep the networking, and networking is the most important.
Absolutely. Just keeping in touch, and also just informing your circle like what you're working on currently, because you don't know like where things can maybe show up sometimes, and it does happen. It does happen, and this like joint ventures begin. So also what I wanted to ask you about is like just like the process of applying for grants. What do you think is the most important thing there in this process? Like, what do you prioritize when you are writing the applications?
Well, it's a very hard question, to be honest, because there are so many scenarios. I think each case can be judged individually. There are like really a lot of different scenarios. There is something that's, I mean, obviously, mainly, again, like I'm gonna repeat, like your mentality and ideology should not change anyhow. Otherwise, you're just becoming very much dependent on foreign ideas, and I don't like it. I think like you should always stay true to yourself, and then like kind of find the proper funding partner with that, and yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Giorgi. And I would like to invite all the speakers also to join us back. Yes, thank you. Because we would just talk a little bit, also actually replying to some questions from the audience. So the question that we've got is, when an artist gets a grant, how do we use it? Can we pay ourselves, or does it all go to production? Can we pay our bills while creating? I don't know, Arthur, would you like to
Yeah.
or Giorgi?
Giorgi,
Yes,
go ahead.
yes.
You go.
I can also answer that. Again, there are like different varieties, obviously. Depends on the funding organization. But for example, in Tbilisi, we had this Artist at Risk program for 2 years. And there was totally like free of usage, basically. Like you could use the grant as much as you wanted. Like you were getting like specific program for the residency. But obviously there are grants, for example, Juliet would know more. If it's about the movies, obviously it has totally different requirements, because then it's the group work where they're more like, there's more need of checking in that also the funding is spread equally and correctly. So it depends like what kind of grant you're getting. They're like all different versions of it.
Yes, possible scenarios. I don't know, Julie, do you want to comment on it as well?
Yeah, I basically just will repeat what you said. Yeah, okay. From my experience is that it has to be very evidenced and everything itemized, including your own time, including your time as well.
Yes.
Just to add one thing, like be careful that you don't get like dependent on the grants, especially with your bills. That's a very dangerous thing. So look also to alternative models beyond the grant making model. I've seen too often that organizations or individuals get really dependent on with their daily bills on grants, and then there can be a funding freeze. There can be a sudden change in geopolitics, what we're witnessing now, and very good to also have sponsors, have like commissioners, have like other forms. Online, crypto, and so on.
Yes, keeping
to avoid that.
Yeah. Yes, please, Giorgi.
Yeah, to avoid that, you should also like if you're getting, for example, relocation grants, if you're artists moving to another country, most probably like your organization is in charge of finding you the proper setup for continuing living or supporting yourself financially without their support. So you should use this time of grants to actually find a way how to sustain yourself without the fund, because they might give you second time, but that will be it. It's not going to repeat forever. So
yeah. Arthur, I actually have a question. Do you think it's in general like appropriate and correct to reach out to grant providers in order to ask them for the feedback in regards to unsuccessful application? Because I can imagine a lot of people struggle with it. They want to have some clarity, etc. And at the same time, the numerous amount of applications, so the organization can't really, right, reply to everyone.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Depends also again a lot on the type of funder. I think most like private funders or company like foundations that get a lot of like grants or the EU, let's say the private foundations, they usually don't have time to provide feedback. So they also usually say that because they get like sometimes thousands and thousands of like proposals. But like the EU, for example, or like bilateral funders, they usually have like an obligation for transparency. So they give like a kind of like rating, like the EU, for example, give like a pointing scoring system. Then you can like check and like sometimes even like ask questions on that. But like my experience with like private philanthropy, no, and they will just get back to you and say like, sorry, we don't have the time, which is really annoying also. But what you said, Daria, like it's very good to ask friends, like people, curators, like people that used to work for funds that have been there before for feedback, and also if you didn't get it, like those people can sometimes also tell you the reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. We also have a pretty practical question from the audience in regards to the budget. So for a transparent budget break, do we need to ask for offers from suppliers, for example, for materials? Juliet, maybe you can answer.
Yeah, I've not had to have evidence of offers, but I've had to do that anyway so that I know what I'm working with. When I'm building quotes or the budget, that would happen naturally so that I have an idea of scope of what I'm working with. Yeah,
makes sense, just to keep everything, all the details. Absolutely. So so what else? I think that it's also very crucial to discuss the responsibility of grant recipients after they are receiving the funding. You know what I mean? Like we really need to be very efficient with that topic as well. I don't know, maybe, Giorgi, you want to talk a little bit about it? That just, keeping track of all the documents, all the, checks, etc.
Yeah, I mean that's really important. Not only to like be fair to yourself and to your funding organization, but also to keep working with them, because it might be that like, yes, like if you don't give proper reports, might be that they will not ask full budget back, but it's also rare. But even in that case, then your reputation is off. And like, believe me, funders talk to each other. Like everybody talks to each other. So if you really do really bad reports or like not keep the track and stuff, sorry, but you're done. It's like it'll be really, really hard to regain the reputation and regain the to be in the same stage basically. So I would really recommend to don't write anything in the application if you cannot fulfill. Or I mean, of course, there are like things happen and there are like a lot of consequences and like stuff. But if you cannot, I mean, it's very, very important to keep the track of all the receipts and to keep communication, which is the key aspect for the funding organizations as well. If something happens that you cannot do, you should directly tell them immediately, and then like they are also people, they are monsters, so they will understand, or they will find a way, or they might help you to do it other way or change the project or anything. But the communication is the key. If you cannot do something, but you should at least keep it fair with the documents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I think it's super important to be very open and also share like if something doesn't go well. As you said, Giorgi, like funders are most funders, let's say, are not like monsters. They actually really appreciate it when you share openly if you're struggling with something and if you cannot meet the deadline. That's actually better to be transparent than not making the deadline or just not communicating. Usually the worst funding relations I had when I was a funder myself were the ones where the grantee or like the organization is very silent and doesn't communicate, like, and then you think like, hey, suddenly something is happening unexpectedly. And if you're just transparent and open, even if things don't go well, that's usually the best.
Yeah, thank you. So there is another question from the audience. It's a pleasure that everyone is so active today. What is the best way to define the concept in an application? In the document, there were mentioned the 4 questions: what, who, when, where. Can we maybe go a bit more in details, Arthur, if possible?
Yeah, that depends a lot, of course, on the funding format, because like these funding formats, they kind of radically different. Like if you're applying for the EU, you usually get like a lot of questions that you have to answer. Like sometimes you have to send in like 20 pages of like information, like track record, like all kinds of information about the organization. While for like more private funders, you just need to answer like send in a basic pitch and send in documentation about your work. What I meant with these questions, what, who, when, where, is like that based on what I've seen, and I've seen a lot of grant applications, like people just, as I said before, like write what they think. They just start like writing, like you're in a world that you're creating as an artist, or like you're building a cultural project. But like the people that read these applications, they just see it at once in the context of a lot of different applications, and they want to know very clearly, like, why does this matter? What is the purpose? If you're not there, is that, what will happen? Like, why are you on Earth? Almost like very existential questions. So that's why I said like what, who, who's the team, and where does it take place? What happens a lot is like super vague, like IDs, and usually those ones, what I've seen in jury meetings, they get like dismissed because people are like, yeah, I don't know exactly what this is,
Yeah, I would add also, like, with that, because I've been I mean, I'm not a funder, but I've been selecting a lot of projects. So I agree with Arthur also, like, with everything. But I also would add that like a lot of organizations now are switching to the kind of structure of like 2-phase. Like when first you need to send just a brief of the idea of like 1 page or 2 pages to save all the energy that Arthur is talking about actually. So it's very important to be like very clear about your idea and very specific and short and
and emphasize the community aspect, like what has been said before is like funders talk with each other, funders like really check also with peers, like very often like organizations or like experts or famous artists are in the juries, so like build up your kind of credibility, and that's also very important in that application format. Like mention where you have been exhibited, who you know, like articles that have been written about you, and so on.
Yeah, a little bit of name dropping, and then just taking care, like the track is important as well. Yeah. So Juliet, I also have a question about do you think that, like, do you recommend applying for multiple grants simultaneously, or do you usually just go for this one application and just very thoroughly working on that?
Yeah, I've been known to apply for more than one at once.
I felt it almost. No, I'm kidding.
I don't know how helpful that is, and everyone's different, but I think it's been mentioned before that you can't depend completely on the outcome. You know, you can't just guarantee, right, in 6 months I'm going to pitch for that and I'm going to get it. So in that way, you kind of, for me personally, I need to have my eye on a couple, you know, and some of them might be applicable, like some of the stories I'm writing might be applicable to different funding bodies, but try not to overwhelm. It's a personal preference, but try not to overwhelm when you're also working as a freelancer, and yeah, not thinking I'm going to guarantee get this, because that's not often the way sometimes. Yeah. What about you guys? What do you think?
Yeah, I know it might sound strange, but last year with one funding opportunity, we applied like with 9 applications, but it was like all different partners. We were just like partnering with different applications. Basically, only one was our original applications, but yeah, it's possible if the funding organization allows that or opportunity.
Yeah,
but obviously it's not advised to like bombard it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but indeed, like if you get rejected, just move on and apply for more. Like indeed, apply for multiple ones. Sometimes like a project is just not a fit, and it's like if you get rejected, doesn't automatically mean that the idea is bad.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, on this note, first of all, I want to tell you thank you so much for such an insightful conversation. It's really a pleasure also to have all of you here, and also just to see all these diverse perspectives. And hopefully we will just continue talking about it, because it's a very important and very fruitful topic to dive into, and also geography-wise, etc. So see you soon.
Thank you, Daria. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you. Good luck, everyone.
Good luck, Jeff. Ciao.
Good luck getting grants. Bye.
Bye.